For our species to continue to prosper, we must develop three major energy sources to displace our addiction to fossil fuel. The burning of fossil fuels has already raised the CO2 concentration in the atmosphere to climate-damaging levels. Fossil fuel reserves will last only about 40 years for oil, 60 years for gas, and 130 years for coal. Fossil fuels have provided most of the world energy consumption over the last 25 years, with small contributions from renewables and nuclear. Our use of energy, which has been increasing rapidly for 150 years, is forecast to triple by the end of this century. This increased consumption is mainly due to an expected 50% increase in the world population by the end of this century. The first energy source we must develop for our use is the energy radiated to us from the Sun. The Sun is more than 300,000 times heavier than Earth and consists almost entirely of hydrogen and helium. The Sun is so huge that the enormous gravity force at its centre causes continuous nuclear fusion of 4 hydrogen atoms into 1 helium atom, which releases all the energy emitted by the Sun. Some of this energy from the Sun can be converted directly into electricity by solar panels. However, it is the circulation of wind and rain caused by the Sun's energy which can be converted more easily into electricity by wind turbines and by water turbines. But all these forms of renewable energy are limited by many practical weather, space and cost constraints. Therefore, the second energy source we must develop is uranium, which can produce energy continuously, 24/7. Where does the energy in uranium come from, and how can it be released for our use? Uranium is created in stars which are much bigger than our Sun. The high gravity force at the centre of these huge stars causes the fusion of heavier and heavier atoms, releasing energy each time until iron is formed. But when iron is fused, it absorbs energy, and so the star instantaneously implodes and then explodes as a supernova, violently fusing and then dispersing the heaviest atoms, such as uranium, which is 235 times heavier than hydrogen. We are fortunate that some of this uranium was trapped in the Earth's crust when our solar system was formed from a dust cloud containing a mixture of debris from older stars. Uranium atoms are not completely stable, and when impacted by a neutron particle, the nucleus fissions, releasing 2 high-energy neutrons. If many uranium atoms are present, a nuclear fission chain reaction occurs, continuously releasing large amounts of energy. This valuable energy is captured as heat in a nuclear fission reactor, such as a PWR. Pressurized water is pumped through the reactor core to absorb the heat, before passing through a heat exchanger containing water, which the heat turns into steam. The steam is then expanded through a turbine to generate electricity. Today there are more than 400 nuclear fission reactors in service in power stations worldwide. A nuclear fission reactor produces toxic, long-life, high-level nuclear waste. However, the volume of the annual waste from a typical PWR is small. It could fit inside a London taxi and can be safely stored underground. But the uranium deposits in the Earth are limited. Therefore, the third energy source we must develop is a nuclear fusion reactor, which can continuously fuse hydrogen to helium, the process that powers the sun. Clearly, this is only worth doing if we can access quantities of hydrogen fuel. In practice, vast quantities of hydrogen can be released from water, H2O, using electrolysis to break the hydrogen-oxygen chemical bond. But how can we create the extreme conditions necessary for the nuclear fusion of hydrogen? One way is to use JET, the Joint European Torus, the largest experimental nuclear fusion reactor in the world. At very high temperatures, hydrogen can be controlled by the powerful magnets which form the donut-shaped reactor. In 1997, JET achieved 1% of the fusion power of a full-size reactor for a few seconds. The next step is ITER, the International Thermonuclear Experimental Reactor, a nuclear fusion reactor which is 8 times larger than JET. This ambitious project, jointly funded by all the world's major industrial nations, is expected to become fully operational by 2030. ITER's goal is to produce 30% of the fusion power of a full-size reactor for a few minutes. From the previous considerations, a clear world energy plan emerges for the rest of the 21st century. The grey region respects the UN recommended maximum use of fossil fuels to protect the environment. The green region assumes a 10-fold increase in energy obtained from renewables. The orange region, after 2050, is energy obtained from the new nuclear fusion power stations, which must be developed from JET and ITER. The remaining energy gap is filled by a new generation of nuclear fission power stations. We have the engineering ability to come off fossil fuels and to exploit the 3 other usable energy sources that have been described. The challenge now is to overcome our cultural differences by working together to develop the renewable and nuclear energy resources necessary to support all our futures.